Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Dr. Saida Bano and I am Associate Professor of Obstetrics and Gynecology at Sahiwal Medical College, Sahiwal. Today's lecture is for final year and the topic is benign and pre-malignant lesions of the cervix. Learning objectives of this presentation are: at the end of the lecture you would be able to learn about different benign lesions of the cervix, then what are different pre-malignant lesions on the cervix, their introduction, pathophysiology, natural history of pre-malignant lesions on the cervix, also called cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. How can we diagnose and investigate these pre-malignant lesions with the help of cervical cytology? What is the role of human papilloma virus in the diagnosis of the pre-malignant lesions of the cervix, then role of colposcopy, and then treatment of these various pre-malignant diseases of the cervix, and then at the end of the presentation, new innovation, HPV vaccines, and then extended matching questions at the end of the lecture. Cervix, it's a cylindrical lower extremity of the uterus. It contains collagen fibers. It has two parts, ectocervix and endocervix. Ectocervix, the vaginal part, it is lined by non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium and it appears pink. External os appears as slit-like structure in the center of the ectocervix, and this is the opening of the endocervical canal. Endocervical canal is lined by a columnar cell, and at the junction of squamous and columnar junction, an area is called squamocolumnar junction. Now, different benign conditions affecting the cervix. Cervical ectropion, a commonest presentation in reproductive age group. You will be seeing a pinkish area present on the ectocervix. Actually, this is the outpouting of columnar cells to the ectocervix. Here, cervical ectropion, 3 P's are important: puberty, pills, and pregnancy. Here you can see cervix, columnar cells, and ectocervix. This is the squamocolumnar junction. So what happened during pregnancy, at puberty, or with pill uses? These columnar cells or glandular lying endocervix is exposed towards vagina, and then this area is called ectropion. Actually, this is the area of the cervix where this area, actually columnar cells, they are exposed to acidic environment of the vagina, and then to resist that, cervical metaplasia occurs. Metaplasia is a terminology in which one mature type of epithelium is replaced by an other mature epithelium. So this is endocervix, canal of the cervix. It is turned outward in case of cervical ectropion. The exposed part of the endocervix appears red and raw, and endocervical cells are exposed to the acidic environment of the vagina. So that's why there is metaplasia. One mature epithelium is replaced by a columnar, that is columnar, by a squamepithelium. So it is not an ulcer, ectropion. It is due to eversion of the columnar epithelium of the endocervix into the ectocervix. It occurs in childbearing age and most frequently during pregnancy with combined contraceptive users due to high estrogen levels. How can we diagnose? Symptoms: postcoital and intermenstrual bleeding, or sometimes the excessive mucus non-purulent vaginal discharge from the mucus-secreting glands of the columnar epithelium. Speculum examination shows red granular area around the external os, and cervical smear is mandatory before treatment to exclude cervical carcinoma, and also swabs to exclude chlamydia infection. Then what is the treatment of cervical ectropion? We can ablate this area, or we can remove with the help of knife or with the help of large loop. So different modalities of treatment: laser ablation, electrosurgery, radiosurgery, chemical coagulation, and then cryosurgery for ectropion. Then another benign condition which is quite common, lesion of the cervix. This is called nibothiensis of the cervix. Actually, in the process of squamous metaplasia, where columnar epithelium that is exposed to acidic environment of the vagina, there is replacement with the squamous epithelium. The underlying, there are some crypts of the cervical glands. So when they are covered by squamous metaplasia, there is retention of the cyst from the nibothien. The crypts of the columnar glands, when they are covered with squamous metaplasia, there is obstruction of the glandular openings and retention of the cyst from the nibothian follicles. It might link to chronic cervicitis. So they are mucus-filled lesions, multiple translucent, opaque, white or yellow lesions ranging from 2 mm to 10 mm in size, and retention cysts of the endocervical columnar cells occurring where a tunnel or cleft has been covered by squamous metaplasia. They are so common that they are considered a normal feature of an adult cervix. So there is no treatment. If a treatment is required, the larger one, the mucus can be drained. Then cervical polyps. These are benign tumors arising from the endocervical epithelium. They may be seen as smooth reddish protrusions. Mostly they are asymptomatic, but they could be associated with excessive vaginal discharge, intermenstrual bleeding or postcoital bleeding. They can easily be removed by avulsion with polyp forceps as an outpatient therapy. This is the picture of the cervical polyps, small polyp, small and large. Then cervical stenosis, another benign condition affecting the cervix. This is pathological narrowing of the endocervical canal. Usually it is iatrogenic by a surgical event after cone biopsy or leucothermy for the treatment of pre-malignant lesions of the cervix. There is a collection of blood behind the cervical stenosed area. So there is formation of hematometra. So then there is cyclical dysmenorrhea. Treatment is by surgical dilatation of the cervix under ultrasound or hysteroscopic guidance. This is the ultrasound picture of hematometra. Sometimes it is converted into pyometra if gets infected. This is the cervical stenosis, and this is all collection of the blood inside the uterine cavity. Then different pre-malignant lesions of the cervix. They are very important because they are precursors of cervical cancer. And cervical cancer is caused by persistent high-risk HPV infection. Small HPV is a small double-stranded DNA virus. It could be high risk and low risk. Now, from right now up till now, there are 100 different types of human papilloma virus infections. There are low risk type viruses which are 6 and 11 that cause warts, and there are high risk types of viruses which are 16, 18, 31, 33 and 45. They cause cervical cancer. HPV spreads by sexual intercourse. Infection is usually transient. Minority of the patients, they develop persistent genital tract infection that predisposes to premalignant and malignant disease. HIV, smoking and transplant recipients they are associated with reduced cell mediated immunity, so then there is reduced clearance of HPV. So these type of persons, they are prone to develop pre-malignant lesions of the cervix. Then what is pathophysiology? Tubular cervix is composed of stromal tissue covered by squamous epithelium in vagina, that is ectocervix, and columnar epithelium within the cervical canal, that is endocervix. The endocervix contains many deep folds called crypts that are lined by columnar epithelium. The meeting of the two types of epithelia is called squamocolumnar junction. Position of the squamocolumnar junction varies throughout life. In the children, as a children, it is at the external cervical os, and puberty it extends outwards or to the ectocervix. In adults, it returns to external cervical os through the process of squamous metaplasia. And transformation zone is the area between original squamocolumnar junction and the current squamocolumnar junction, where epithelium changes from columnar to squamous over time, and this transformation zone is very important. Here the columnar epithelium covered with squamous, leading to retention of the mucus, forming Nibothian follicles, as we have already discussed. So this is the cervical transformation zone found between the new and old squamocolumnar junction. This is the original squamocolumnar junction, and this area, actually this is ectocervix and this is endocervix. So what happens at puberty, in the childbearing age, with COCP use, this endocervical area is then covered by stratified squamous epithelium, and then there are glands. So then there is new squamocolumnar junction formation. So the area between original squamocolumnar junction and the new squamocolumnar junction is called the transformation zone. So this is the area where there is squamous metaplasia, and also there is inoculation of the human papilloma virus, and where there is plasia and carcinoma. So this is the area from where we take as cells exfoliated from the cervix as pap smear, and here we can diagnose pre-malignant and malignant lesions of the cervix. Then again, pathophysiology. Transformation zone is the site where premalignancy and malignancy develops, where HPV infection persists in certain individuals. It triggers an oncogenic process in the region of transformation zone, and integration of human papilloma virus DNA into the basal cells leads to immortalization and rapid cellular turnover. This disordered immaturity within the cells is called cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. Immature cells are hyperchromatic with large nuclei, minimal cytoplasm, and abnormal mitotic figures. These features are very important. Hyperchromatic large nuclei, because they have to be stained with acetic acid producing acetowhite areas, minimal cytoplasm, and abnormal mitotic figures. CIN, cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, is classified as CIN1 or low grade, or high grade CIN2 and 3, bottom third or top two-third of the cervical epithelium when they are involved, then bottom third in CIN1 or low grade, and top two-third in CIN2 and 3. Natural history of cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. Actually, most of the CIN lesions, they regress in the period of time. Although there is progression of CIN, it may occur depending upon cell-mediated immune response of the individual. There is low-grade disease where regression is common, so observational follow-up is an option in low-grade disease because regression is common. But in case of high grade disease, risk of progression to cancer in 20% of the patients, so it requires treatment. The reason being progression is high risk HPV disease, high risk HPV infection, reduced host immunity, and smoking. There is convincing link between cervical intraepithelial neoplasia and cancer of the cervix. Nearly all microscopic cancers, they coexist with cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. Now, this is the natural history of cervical intraepithelial neoplasia from time to months to years. So, it takes many years. So, that's why the cervical screening is cost effective, because it takes many years from pre-malignant lesions to the malignant ones. So we can pick the lesion in between, and then we can treat the lesion. So this is the normal stratified squamous epithelium. Here HPV virus inoculation, and it can lead to borderline changes, and these are borderline changes. Coilocytosis. So then in CIN1 or mild dyskaryosis, the basal 1/3 cells, they are abnormal. Increased nucleocytoproteins and increased nucleoproteins and less cytoplasm. There is a regression of 57% regression in CIN1 cases to normal. Then CN2, 2/3 of the epithelium is involved. There is also moderate dyskaryosis, correlation with moderate dyskaryosis, and there is 43% regression, likelihood regression of the disease. In CAN3, this is also called severe dyskaryosis, and here CAN3, 32%
and other disease classification,
high grade
dyskaryosis
cancer.
So
high grade squamous intraepithelial
they are
dysplastic,
but
it is
high
not
cell,
cancer
low cell,
yet.
so
Because
this
in
classification
case
all
of
we
cancer,
can
they
combine.
Then how can we diagnose and investigate premalignant lesions of the cervix? So it could be by cervical cytology with the help of pap smear and the liquid based cytology. Then what is the role of human papillomavirus in cervical screening? Because HPV is the causative agent. So if there is a role in cervical screening of human papillomavirus, so then a national cervical screening program of UK, and then what is called postcopy. Cervical cytology, cells exfoliated from the cervix, they can be examined under microscope. This idea was taken up by Papinoculo. He collected these exfoliated cells with wooden spatula, placed them on the glass slide, and then the glass slide is fixed and examined under microscope. So the dysplastic cells, they can be noted, and we can get the cytology report of mild to moderate or severe dyskaryosis. Pap smear now superseded by liquid based cytology. In liquid based cytology, a small brush is used to sample cells from the transformation zone, and the brush then placed in a fixative. This is then spun down, and the cellular aspect of the specimen examined under the microscope. Here again a glass slide is made, but fine one. This liquid based cytology has got less false positive rate, and there is increased sensitivity and specificity, because cervical mucus and blood, it is all washed, and only the cells, they are examined under microscope. UK's National Cervical Screening Program, women aged 25 to 65 years are invited every 3 to 5 years to take part in the screening program. Then this is the way where this is pap smear. How we take pap smear? Cells are scraped from the cervix and examined under microscope to check for disease or other problems. Cervix viewed through speculum with the patient in a lithotomy position, and then the patients, they can be we can have pap smear in this way. Then what to expect during pap smear? Speculum is inserted into the vagina, swab inserted into vagina, and collect cells from the cervix, and then cells to place has to be seen by the pathology lab. Then this is liquid waste cytology kit. Here the cytobrush, eye spatula, another type of cytobrush, endocervical brush, and this is the liquid. This cytobrush or anything from here can be used to take scraping from the cervix, and here in case of brush it is broken and it is placed inside this liquid, and then there is thin slide preparation and it is visualized under the microscope. Like the cells, they are collected by Lary brush and two kinds of preservative solutions, and then a fine thin preparation glass slide is made. It is seen under microscope and then treatment is given. So this is convention pap smear preparation, and this is liquid based preparation. So you can see how fine is it, how fine cells we can see in the microscope, and here how bizarre it is. Then what is colposcopy? Colposcopy is the examination of the magnified cervix using a light source. It is used for both diagnosis and treatment of premalignant lesions of the cervix. A patient is put in lithotomy position. Speculum examination, cervix examined with light source under magnification 5 to 20 fold. Application of acetic acid and iodine solutions. It highlights abnormal areas to be biopsied. Acetic acid denatures the nucleoprotein in the abnormal cells, so there are acetowhite areas, and iodine, actually the premalignant cells, they are devoid of glycogen in the cytoplasm, so it can lead to staining of normal areas with abnormal areas not stained, and then the area can be biopsied. Another important feature of cervical intraepithelial neoplasia is the formation of new vessels. So they could be high grade or it could be low grade. So there are different types of options. If at colposcopy we see high grade lesion, then we can see and treat. But if we are unsure of the lesion, we can only take biopsy, and we can select and treat at a later stage. This is the lithotomy position. Here speculum is introduced inside vagina. This is the light source, and this is the binocular microscope by which we can, with the help of which we visualize the cervix. A magnifying view of the cervix is visualized. What to expect in colposcopy? Speculum examination and cervix is cleared, then then doctor sees through the binocular microscope, and then doctor looks for cell changes, growth and inflammation. If there is anything abnormal, that can be treated as well. Then this is a colposcope. This is the normal area of the cervix. This is low grade cervix cervical area. This one, and this one high grade cervical area. So this is normal, then cervical finding on colposcopy. This is low grade squamous intraepithelial lesion or CN1. This is high grade CAN lesion or CNN2 or 3. Then what is the treatment of premalignant lesions of the cervix? Aim is to effectively eradicate cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, ensuring that post-treatment cytology is negative while minimizing harm from the treatment options. So, low-grade cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, only close follow-up might be required. Colposcopy and cytology 6 months after initial. So, the low-grade lesions regress spontaneously in 60% of the cases. So, in case of low-grade lesions, close follow-up, colposcopy and cytology 6 months after initial treatment. Then, if there is high-grade CN, because there is 20% progression to cancer, it has to be treated either with cold coagulation with the help of BEF. Then high-grade cervical intraepithelial neoplasia. High-grade lesions, they can be treated with LATs with cold coagulation or biopsy. Now, what is the test of cure? Women who got treated for CIN, they undergo a test of cure 6 months later. So, if you get a question that a lady who had CN2 or 3 and she had conization of the cervix, now what should we do? So, when got treated, patient has to undergo a test of cure 6 months later. High risk HPV testing, and with the help of high risk HPV testing and cervical cytology. Test of cure includes investigation for high risk HPV testing and for cervical cytology of the residual cervical area. If it is negative, we will routine recall the patient 3 yearly. But if HPV testing is positive or it is positive on cervical cytology, we have to identify any residual untreated disease with the help of repeat colposcopy. And women with a history of CIN, they have an increased lifetime risk of recurrent CIN and cervical cancer. So once treatment is not a surety that it is not going to occur, the patient is at high risk and she has to be in close follow-up with the help of HPV testing and cycle cytology. Then what is HPV testing? HPV testing improves the sensitivity of cervical screening, extremely high negative predictive power. 95% of the patients, they have normal cytology, and then we call them on routinely after 3 years. With high grade cytology, 2% are referred for urgent colposcopic assessment. When there is minor cytologic abnormalities, they undergo reflex testing with high risk HPV. HPV negative will be followed routine recall, that is after 3 yearly, but high risk HPV positive are referred for colposcopy. In some areas of the world, some countries, they are asking for primary HPV screening as part of cervical screening program. Now, HPV vaccines. So when the causative agent is known, it is known that it leads to premalignant lesion, it is known that it leads to malignant lesion, so it is a virus. So then we talk about vaccination. HPV vaccines, they have been shown to be safe and effective at preventing high risk HPV infections. School based immunized programs in UK at 12 to 13 years old girls has been started. Bivalent vaccines prevent against 16 and 18 which are responsible for 70% cases of cancer of the cervix. Then quadrivalent vaccines, there is additional protection against 6 and 11. And 6 and 11, you know what is that? These are low risk type for causing warts. There are different types of currently licensed HPV vaccines. Some are bivalent like Cervarix by GlaxoSmithKline. Some are quadrivalent like Gardasil by Merck. Then non-valent Merck Gardasil 9. Here this new non-valent, it is against so many virus types: 6, 11, 16, 18, 31, 33, 45, 52, 58. So HPV types are these, and then age range 9 to 25 years. This could be 9 to 45 years, and administration 016, or somewhere it is 026. So contraindications: severe allergic reaction to the previous dose. So human papillomavirus is a common sexually transmitted infection responsible for several anogenital cancers and benign papillomas, and persistent infection by oncogenic high risk subtype is necessary for the development of cervical cancer. Is a largely preventable disease through local treatment of the screen detected pre-invasive lesions. Based upon cytology, cervical screening program has led to significant reduction in mortality from cervical cancer. HPV testing is expected to further reduce the incidence of cervical cancer due to higher accuracy, while more specific tests are required to select women that should be referred to colposcopy. HPV based testing and vaccination hold great promise for reducing the burden of HPV related disease, but concerted international efforts are needed to expand coverage globally. Unfortunately, this is not globally. The high risk, the developed countries where the screening program is effective, the death rate from serious cervix or prevalence is quite low, but in the poor countries this is more. So key learning points again same. Cervix is a preventable disease. Prophylactic HPV vaccination can prevent infection with high risk HPV types that cause cancer of the cervix and other lower genital tract cancers. Regular screening by cervical cytology allows pre-malignant disease to be detected and treated before it undergoes malignant transformation. Women who are treated for high grade CIN are at increased risk of cervical cancer in their lifetime, but regular cervical screening will pick up residual recurrent disease that can be treated. Now, extended matching questions. If there is inadequate cervical cytology, what are you going to do? Cryotherapy, direct punch biopsy, LADS, repeat referral colposcopy, repeat cervical cytology in 3, 6 and 3 years, test of cure. What's your answer? You have to match. Then when there is mild dyskaryosis, what are you going to do? And when there is CIN2 on direct punch biopsy, so what is the treatment option? Then what is if negative test of cure, like you have treated the patient and there is test of cure is negative for cervical cytology and human papillomavirus testing, so then what is the next option? Thank you so much.